Okay, continuing with this transformations, clusters, pathways, solutions. The book puts it as a relay race between SLCPs and carbon. So short-lived climate pollutant lever has to be pulled now, right now. Okay, it will yield fast results, visible results, and co-benefits. So there is the relay race that has to have started already, and the carbon lever also should start now so that it has a start by 2040 to take the baton from the SLCPs and keep running. By 2070, we will definitely need the ACE, or the atmospheric carbon extraction lever, to be ready to run full speed to bring us to the race by 2100 to meet our targets, the safe global warming standards. Just to repeat the text to go with it, it's important not to confuse the timeline of when each runner begins to bend the curve downward. So here is the bending of the curve again. With time when that runner needs to get into action. So it's not like carbon only starts in 2040 or ACE only starts in 2070. You literally have to think about it as a relay race where the first runner takes off and the second runner begins to run even before the first runner is arrived, and the first runner has to keep running to catch up with the second runner to hand off the baton, so that the second runner has gained enough speed to take off with the baton. The same thing works here. For the carbon runner to take the baton around 2040, carbon mitigation efforts must begin immediately by 2020 the latest. Already we are in 2020. Has it started? Well, it depends on how you justify it, but yes, the examples we saw in Canada and Iceland can be counted towards that, but we have a long way to go. Just in terms of technology, for example, there is no effective demonstrated large-scale scalable atmospheric carbon extraction yet. Okay, it depends on how much it costs per ton of carbon to be removed. If it is now at something like few $100s, that is not really worth the effort. So it has to come down to something like few tens of dollars per ton to extract CO2 of the atmosphere. Obviously, there are big challenges. Carbon CO2 is only 0.4%. It's a trace gas in the atmosphere. So what kind of system can do it when it's not done at source is going to be difficult, because you're taking out a tiny amount from the air. Okay, artificial trees, artificial photosynthesis, many ideas are out there. Okay. And achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. So that carbon neutrality, we must extract as much carbon as we are emitting by 2050. The ACE runner has to be ready for action beginning around 2030. Why? We may have to take out as much as 1 trillion ton of CO2 before 2100. Okay, we have already emitted 2.2. By 2100 we are headed somewhere few trillion more, and we have to take out as much as 1 trillion tons of CO2. This amount is so large that it cannot be done in a few decades, so you need time. We have to start taking out 15 billion tons of CO2 by 2040 and continue at this rate until the end of the century. Those are the numbers just based on the trajectory we are on now. There is no indication that we are on a trajectory of reducing per capita per year, well, not per capita, but per year total CO2 emissions. 40-50, we are headed up. We are already on the high emission scenarios. Okay? Okay. Moving on to the second cluster, called the societal transformation cluster, we have solution number 2: foster a global culture of climate action through coordinated public communication and education at local to global scales. Okay, there is the people huddling together, no social distancing. Combine technology and policy solutions with innovative approaches to changing social attitudes and behavior. these are easier said than done. Okay, I think I mentioned briefly the elephant and the rider analogy. There is a general awareness that climate change is happening and it's caused by us, but as we said before, the willingness to act on it, the willingness to pay taxes, the willingness to reduce consumption, etc., is got a long way to go. So this is from a link that is given here. It's looking at conservation social science as an example of societal transformation happening. So classic, applied, and interdisciplinary. So it has all your favorite things here: environmental anthropology, environmental philosophy, environmental history, governance, policy, conservation marketing, conservation education, and so on. Communicating conservation social science results will require auditory approaches, text, numerical, which quantify the impact, visual, like a lot of the documentaries that BBC and National Geographic are good at putting out. Again, question is, in terms of social transformations, there is plenty of evidence that shows that people watch these shows, they really feel bad, and then they go back to normal life. They go back to eating their hamburgers and drinking their wine or whatever. In other words, behavioral change is very different than social attitudes. But when enough people are aware and are willing, policy changes become easier. So we cannot underestimate. There is studies showing that peer pressure works, for example. If you are doing something like riding a bike to work, you actually influence a few other people who are close to you. So peer pressure works, right? That's a social transformation cluster. And experimental, like planting trees, doing other things. And artistic. There is lots of climate change art now that actually is playing a bigger and bigger role. Okay, so let me come to this in the next podcast so that I can keep these to a reasonable length. So, social transformation cluster, and basically growing more what is already working in terms of communications, collaborations, actions, and so on. Okay. Success is possible if we stay at it and persevere against opposition, which can sometimes come out of the left field, as it happens again and again in a rich country like the US, which is rather surprising and sometimes a bit distressing, I would say.